All right, everyone, we have a few more folks looking for parking, but I know we've been waiting for a while, so I figured I'd say hello and introduce myself. My name is Ryan Brand. I'm the Director of the Communications Trainings here at the Leadership Institute. And I just wanted to ask people who are here already a quick question. Do any of you guys consider yourselves a glossophobe?
A what?
A glossophobe. You might not even have heard the term before, but anyone, glossophobia. Well, it's a phobia of public speaking. It's two terms. Glossa, I think, means tongue in Greek, and then phobia, of course, meaning fear. If you ask most people, most Americans, what they're really, most anyone in the world, if I really want to make it more correct, what their biggest fears are, public speaking ranks as one of the highest. You think car crashes, you think like sharks in the ocean, you think like, doing something terrible, but no, it is public speaking is one of the biggest fears. It's really a barrier because if you want to be an effective advocate or activist in the public policy process, you kind of have to speak in public. You want to run for office, you're going to have to speak in public. It's one of the requirements of really being effective. So what I'll say is that we're not quite starting yet. I did want to say hello and thank you for your patience. I know parking can sometimes be hectic here in the Clarendon area. But no, Allies background, we've been here for 40 years. We train conservative and libertarian activists. We've been doing this since 1979, and we've trained over 230,000 people in the years we've done it. A significant portion being in the last 10 years that we've really grown. And looking forward into the upcoming political cycles, of course, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit. We're a 501c3, so we don't endorse for any specific candidates or legislation, but we do talk about ideas. We're an educational nonprofit. So we're here, no matter the booms or busts of the political cycle, just finding conservatives who want to get involved and teaching them how to get involved. So again, thank you for your patience. We're going to wait another 5 minutes or so for a few folks. Make sure the coffee is feeling great. We also have dinner tonight. We have dinner this evening from a really nice local place within the community. I think it's Faux Hot, if I remember correctly. They'll be delivering catering for us around 5:30, 5:40. So it's going to be delicious. And I'd love to talk to anyone who has any questions. A lot of what I do in my department is several at LI. But for communications trainings, I do speech writing, I do public speaking, I do debate workshops. I help find guest faculty like the wonderful one we have tonight to teach it. We do on-camera television training. We have a lot of really good guest faculty who are experts who frequently appear on television, on Fox or MSNBC or CNN. We give you techniques on how to be effective in your media appearances. It's like a second language. You can't just show up on television and think you're going to do well. Any of you who've been there before can really just kind of attest to it. So lots of different trainings that we offer. So in the next 5 minutes, still I'm buying a little bit more time for attendees. Any questions for me? I'd love to help. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly. Just out of curiosity, who's been to LI before? Just a show of hands. So a couple people know that, okay, well, good. Well, 5 more minutes or so, and that'll be the ultimate deadline. If they're late, they'll just have to show up in the back because we'll get started. So thanks again.
Thank you.
That's it? Yeah, there's some people coming in.
Are you from Arlington?
Yes.
Are you from Arlington?
No, I'm in the Reston.
In Reston. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm in
I came
Sterling.
here everywhere
Oh, wow.
because I work for the station.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Arlington, but I live in now Loudon. Sterling.
Two blocks away. Yeah, but I used to live in right in Buckingham area.
Okay.
On the
Yes.
Cliff Road and when I first came in 1975. So you live around here, then?
I grew up in Arlington, in the Lawrence area. I went to Kenmore Junior High School and Washington Lee High School.
Yeah.
But then we moved out, and so my kids are in Loudoun County. We live in Sterling.
Yeah,
So we
Thomas
moved
Jefferson
out.
is on the corner right there. Thomas Jefferson, yeah, community center.
I'm coming back to my old neighborhood, basically. It's built out.
I've been travel from Ruston to here almost like about I think like 40 years now. Since 1976, 77. Since until today, I still coming here every week. Because the TV station, I have to go to the work.
I'm just a volunteer. We're here to support Aven.
Yes. Surprisingly.
Hello.
Hello, say hello.
Hello,
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Oh, still?
Yes, it's still open.
Till April, the
Yeah.
Thai New Year.
I know.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Chỉ có tháng riêng là tháng ăn chơi thôi.
Chú cái viết này nó viết là I stole this pen at the Watergate Hotel. Mới hay.
Really?
Stole luôn á.
Oh,
Nó
wow.
phải đi ăn cắp không à.
Really?
Nó cái đó cái marketing catching của nó.
Yeah.
Mỗi cái
Yeah,
con
I-
đi hotel nào con collect cái list của hotel đó.
Watergate là ngon rồi.
Người mà em có thể đó của hàng của BTS là lên trên trang hàng của nó. Không, vô tình đó anh bỏ cái anh thấy như này đó. Cái thằng ba em nghe cái đó, cái thằng ba nói thì anh nói với thì vậy thôi em đi thì mấy mần cái gì đó. Cái chuyện này nhìn quét xong rồi vô tình vô BTS đó xong làm gì đây? Thì có phải là cái chuyện này để em dạ nó quá là nếu thì mà ba em con chỉ thanh thắng được mấy em còn 7 tuổi rồi đó làm kế toán cho văn phòng anh thắng á cái xong rồi dẫn mấy em vô ba em bị 5 năm trước tốt
Đằng này ở xa không đi chơi cũng đâu.
đi xa quá mà nó mỗi nhiên anh nó mình đi chơi ăn chơi màn lắm á mà thầy không á đúng rồi là cái skill ấy thôi chứ đừng có mà ăn chơi nhiều quá mệt lắm anh nó mệt đi đó không ăn đi
Lúc nào nó vào ngày thứ bảy là ngày bệnh nhất.
đúng rồi
Làm việc từ sáng đến tối.
nhiều khi đến sáng thôi nữa ai know upload nữa ai know nó cái này là phải làm thứ hai hoặc là gì thôi chứ quyết cái là mình bận lắm
Không phải nhưng mà có nhớ cái event nó thật xảy ra xa rồi đấy. Yeah,
cho nên là ngày thường thôi quyết
ngày
nấy
thường
quyết nấy không em một kéo mà thứ bảy chủ nhật của em trở lại thứ bảy không
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Tu Do. For some of you who doesn't know who I am, I'm the founder and president of Aven, which stands for American Minority Engagement Network. And this is the 501c4 nonprofit organization to promote the conservative value to minority communities through outreach and through education. So thank you everybody to take your time to come on the beautiful Saturday to come to attend the training. And I also would like to thank you, the Leadership Institute, and Ryan here is the Director of Communication. And the Leadership Institute is generous to offer the free training and free headshots for everybody who comes today. And also, it's they offer dinner too. That's a very generous of the Leadership Institute. And I would like to, on behalf of Aven, would like to thank Ryan and then Mr. Morton Blackwell for giving us the opportunity to do the education for all the grassroots activists. So thank you. So next, I would like to, like I said, Ryan is the organizer of this event, and then he will take over. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
A little bit taller, so we'll move this up. All right. Well, I spoke to you guys real briefly earlier, but just to reiterate again, my name is Ryan. It's a pleasure having you all here. About LI, I want to talk a bit about what we do as an organization before we get into the workshop itself. So as I mentioned before, we're a 501c3 nonprofit educational foundation. Our mission statement as an organization is kind of similar to Amen's. It's to increase the number and effectiveness of conservative activists in the public policy process. It's what we're here to do. It's the name of the game. We're not like think tanks where we publish fancy white papers on policy. We're not interested in any of that. We're interested specifically in the methods and strategies it takes to be effective and to win your race, to make a difference in the media landscape. That's what we're doing. We've done it for 40 years, and as I mentioned before, we've trained over 230,000 people on how to do just that. Just a couple of noteworthy people. Our first graduate way back in '79 was actually Mitch McConnell, as he's getting interested in politics and involved. We've had Jim Jordans, Mark Meadows, Dan Crenshaw. These are all folks who have taken Leadership Institute trainings. Dan Crenshaw took I think 7 trainings before we ran for office. So he did well, clearly, and we offered everyone. We even had Tulsi Gabbard take a few trainings, believe it or not, way back in the day. So we take everyone, although we specifically cater and angle towards conservatives, and that's what we're really here for. So again, founded in 1979, and we have different types of trainings we offer. So today's a communications training. It's public speaking, which is pretty crucial to anyone looking to get involved. But we offer different types too. We offer fundraising, raising money if you're a candidate, grassroots organizing. A lot of that happened in Virginia last election cycle. We had a lot of really principled conservatives get involved, and it made a difference for Virginia politics. So this is stuff that we would like to help offer you guys. We have youth politics, we have youth coordinators, we have folks who get young people on the college campus and maybe just eligible to vote. We get them plugged in, we find those conservative kids, we get them involved on campaigns, helping build a bench to go and get involved in the movement more broadly, and also just kind of finding young people who are conservative and getting them involved, and also just communications. So clicking forward, the thing about what we teach is that it's philosophically neutral in nature. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't matter if you're a staunch conservative or a hardcore leftist. The tools and strategies that are effective in the public policy process are philosophically neutral. Doesn't matter what your angle is. And because of that, it means that if the people you're running against are better at organizing than you, are better at communicating than you, they'll outdo you and they'll win. You're not owed anything in politics, you have to earn it. So it's about being educated and learning how to win to be effective. And because you're here are conservatives and you care about your values, you owe it to your philosophy to learn how to win. And that's what LI would like to provide to you guys. So we offer lots of different trainings. I would love to talk to any of you guys after the workshop or during the breaks about things we can offer. And this is one event of a series of events that we're going to be coordinating with Amen to go in and host different workshops. So this is one of the first big ones in person. So congratulations for being here. We hope for many more in the 2022 year. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. So Rick Tyler is a thought-provoking political analyst offering a broad perspective to unfolding political events. As a professional political strategist, Rick has helped hundreds of candidates prepare for the rigors of campaigning for public office. He's the co-founder of Foundry Strategies, a strategic communication consulting firm specializing in helping political and corporate clients reach their leadership potential by honing their communication skills. Rick was a national spokesperson for U.S. Senator Ted Cruz's presidential campaign. In the 2012 election cycle, Rick was a senior advisor and spokesman to the Winning Our Future PAC, a pro-Newt Gingrich for President super PAC. And prior to joining the PAC, Rick was a key member to the former House Speaker's team for more than a decade, serving as Gingrich's advisor and spokesperson. As a lead trainer for GoPAC and trainer for the Leadership Institute, Rick has trained thousands of candidates, citizens, and public officials and their staffs in the United States and countries around the world, including Canada, Italy, Greece, Japan, and Israel, to lead successful campaigns for elected office. Rick has been invited to speak for many professional group committees and state legislative caucuses. He was a guest lecturer at both the Institute for Politics at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, the Robert J. Dole Institute for Politics at the University of Kansas, and is currently a guest lecturer at the Global Center for Political Engagement at George Washington University. A gifted communicator, Rick has appeared thousands of times on national television news shows, including MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, CBS, NBC, ABC, PBS, HBO, CNBC, and lots others. So I'd like to have a warm round of applause for your guest faculty tonight, Rick Tyler.
Thank you, Ryan. Welcome. I'm glad you're all here. I'm going to be speaking about public speaking. So I speak about public speaking. And one of the reasons I think, as Ryan mentioned, is so important is the communication of ideas happens through venues like public speaking. It is, I think, at its heart, the opportunity to be persuasive. So unless we have the skills, unless we try to acquire the skills to speak effectively in front of a lot of people, we really cede a lot of ground to our intellectual adversaries. It is very important to understand the mediums in which you are communicating. So television medium is a different medium from radio, is a different medium from public speaking, is a different medium from writing an op-ed. All of them are important. They all work together. But I think public speaking is probably the single most important role, because you're in person, people get to meet you, people get to see you in person, convey an idea. And you only have so much time to make an impression. You only have so much time to establish your credibility. You only have so much time to tell stories that both change the mind and change the heart. And if we can do that effectively, then we can be successful public policy advocates. Part of the reason people ask me all the time is, how are we losing on so many fronts in the public policy arena? And a little bit of that is changing. I think in particular, if you look at education, which the left has always owned for a long time, for the first time in the last cycle, including here in Virginia, with Governor Glenn Youngkin won Virginia on really the one key issue of education. It's really remarkable, and because an opportunity had happened and he understood what people were concerned about, and it really played into our hands. So we're heading into this cycle, owning education. Can you believe that? The conservative movement is owning education. I never thought I'd see that. Crime is another issue that's been very interesting. You know, we faced a summer of defund the police and the riots, and a couple weeks ago, I don't even think it was a couple weeks ago, 2 young New York City police officers were killed in the line of duty. One was 22 and one was 27. During the wake of one of the officers, which served as a memorial for both of them at St. Patrick's Cathedral, thousands of police showed up on Fifth Avenue, all in their uniform. And it was a moving scene. And people got the impression, wait a minute, these are the people who every day put their lives on the line to protect mine and my family. And it really changed the narrative. And you notice what happened. President Biden didn't ignore that event. He ran to New York City. Current mayor, who's a Democrat, was a former police officer himself. And the Democrats are beginning to realize that they're in real trouble with the crime issue, because conservatives have been right about law and order and criminal justice all along, and they've been wrong. And they want to move away from it as quickly as possible. We cannot let them forget that they were on the wrong side of law enforcement and who protects our men and women in uniform and who doesn't. And that's done when we have effective public speakers who tell the right stories about the right issues. And so those are two optimistic issues. The third is the economy, which I would say the Republicans or the conservative point of view has been dominant on the economy for quite some time. And here we are again, dominant on the issue of the economy, heading into the midterm elections. Why? Because something that hadn't appeared since the late 1970s, some of you will remember. Looking out to see if anybody remembers the late 1970s.
Yes.
and Jimmy Carter and sky-high inflation and interest rates approaching the 20% mark. Inflation sounds like a fancy word, inflation. What does that mean, inflation? But inflation for a politician is really hard to counter, because we talk about economic indicators all the time, including the unemployment rate, the U16 rate. You know what the U16 rate is? That's the real unemployment rate. They don't talk about that. They talk about the overnight rates, the Fed rates, the Federal Reserve, all of these economic indicators, new home starts. But you know what? They don't really have an effect on people. People think, well, that sounds good. You know, less people filed for unemployment. More people got a job. That sounds really great. But when you go to the meat section of the grocery store and you're buying steaks for the family who's coming over for the dinner, and then you go out and fill up your car, and suddenly you've spent $70 on New York strip steaks for the grill and $60 filling up your SUV, you've encountered inflation. And it cannot be explained away. You cannot be told this is a temporary thing. You cannot be told that this is not. And you cannot be told you got a raise this year, and you may have, because statistically people did get a raise. But unless you got a 7.5% raise, do you know what you got?
No.
You got a cut. You got a pay cut. Because those same dollars that you had in your pocket a year ago, on average, for the average household, are worth $350 less than the things that we buy. So in other words, we go out this year and spend the things that we buy, food, gas, electronics, all the other things we buy. And on average, we spend $350 more per month for those same exact items. That's inflation. That's the worst kind of thief there is. And you have an administration, I noticed the Biden administration finally acknowledged inflation yesterday as something that might not be temporary after all. So it's a lot of optimism, I think, for the coming year, for conservative thought. And I'll give you another example. How many of you can name a liberal, historic, American economic program? Like a big one.
New Deal.
The New Deal. That was a very big one. What else?
Obama bucks.
What's that?
Affordable health.
Affordable Care
Yeah,
Act.
the Obamacare, right?
Obamacare.
Yeah, not an economic program, but a healthcare, but yes, it had a big name and it was a big program. What else?
Cash for clunkers.
Yeah, that was a big one, right? Cash for clunkers. What else?
How about stimulus checks?
All the stimulus.
Yeah.
QE1, QE2.
Childcare.
Then there was the Fair Deal. You remember that? Can anybody name for me a conservative economic program that somebody initiated?
Yeah, that's the problem.
I haven't.
Nobody.
They don't make-
Yeah, there's none.
I can't think of one either. We can think of the ideas, like lower taxes, lower regulation,
Taxation.
flatter, fairer taxes. There's all kinds of things. But we don't have a branded program. And part of the problem that we're always going to be behind, which is why public speaking is so important, is that the media is always going to cover a new government program as a big solution, a big idea. And if you're a conservative, we don't have an analogy, we don't have an analog to that. Because we're not going out and promoting big government programs. We're actually promoting smaller, limited government. And we're actually promoting private sector solutions. That doesn't mean, and we should be clear about that, doesn't mean we're anti-government. We should be pro-good, but pro-limited government that's limited to the prescripts in the Constitution. They're very easy. People can read them. You don't have to be an intellectual to read them. You can just read them. It's a limiting document. It ascribes powers. And so it's very complicated. Yes, you had a question?
So, to campaign lower taxes, that would not attract voters?
It's not a program. It's not like a what was Biden's big one that just failed? Everybody knows it, right? It rolls off your lips. Build back better. BBB, right? Build back better, right? That was their big liberal social welfare program. They called it, what did they call it? It's actually very clever. Human infrastructure. That's how Build Back Better was supposed to be sold, right? But we don't have an analog to that because it seems that too many conservatives have lost the ability to defend the free market, defend individual liberty, defend the role of capitalism and businesses, which, by the way, has lifted more people out of poverty than any other solution.
So what would you call Contract with America, or what would you call Ronald Reagan's tax reform?
I would call a Contract with America a political document. It was a brilliant political document. It was a list of, I think, 10 items, and some of them had subsets, and all of them had tested probably close to 70% public approval. And they did a Capitol Hill Steps event, which everybody thought was nutty, which actually was based on Ronald Reagan's Capitol Hill Steps event with the Senate 4 years before, and they actually won the Senate. Everybody forgets that. And then they passed the Contract with America, and in fact, but the Contract with America was a lot of undoing as opposed to proscribing, unscribing, right?
And so you would then, yeah, because the Contract with America was deregulation.
Yes,
yeah,
and it was a brilliant communications program, and I'll tell you why it was brilliant. Here's why it was brilliant. In 1996, President Bill Clinton stood at a podium like this, only much grander, in Chicago at his renomination convention. And he talked to the delegates, which were all Democrats. And in that speech, you can go read it, he took credit for 13 items, 13 bills that he had passed, that came directly out of the Contract with America. So while they were saying on television, the Contract on America is going to ruin America, destroy America, old people are going to eat dogs. Oh, you heard it all, right? He was signing the bills and telling his delegates that he had done all these things, which he did. He signed the bills. And you know what they did, delegates at the convention? They cheered. They cheered. I would say that is a remarkable public policy achievement. Now, Bill Clinton probably won the personality war against Newt Gingrich, but Gingrich clearly won the policy battle. There was no question about that. So that's what I'm talking about. It's a great example of how to communicate publicly with a grand idea and then nationalize a campaign, which the left does all the time. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great example. Yes, sir.
Yeah, with Nixon going off the gold standard, fiat currency, was that?
Yeah, that was a fiasco, right?
We're still under it.
Yeah, it's still a fiasco. Nixon also, God bless him, God rest his soul, imposed wage and price controls. He did a lot of things that were not really good. Maybe he did some other good things. It was arguable. Yes, sir. And then we'll get on to my lecture.
Okay, let's.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, it was about, you had mentioned how the liberals use spending to gain political favor.
Yes.
And conservatives have been not doing that. I think that is the reason why I think they have been losing. Where the Democrats or liberals, they use it to degenerate really productivity. That money's going to be spent anyways, so we might as well make policies to spend that money to create a stimulus. For example, to encourage, provide money to encourage marriage between a man and a woman, encourage to have multiple children, to encourage them to have a home, and giving them help, economic help for them to afford that. And that's something that is nation building rather than deconstruction, and making sure that they stay married and have economic incentives to stay married. the country is falling apart because of that, the lack of the nuclear family. Building a family, a mother and a father, I think that's very attractive to some people who want to be a mother and a father eventually. I don't know, that is to conserve this nation. So I think it's a very conservative thing to do. And if that money's going to be spent, let's spend it to build a country rather than degenerate it. That's not just enough.
I take your point, and there's been, historically in the tax code, there has been incentives to being married because there used to be a much better incentive for children. Well, there still are. There's still tax incentives for children in marriage. But I wouldn't call that spending, right? So when the government allows you to keep your money, we can never, we can't. That's your money. Like if you get to keep it, you didn't like when they say corporate giveaways. That doesn't mean that that doesn't necessarily mean they're giving the corporations money. Sometimes it does, and I'm not for corporatism, and I will argue vigorously against it. But when you say tax cuts for the rich, like it's their money. Like we can argue about the tax rate, that's fine, but I take your point.
Payment of mortgages. We're talking about paying the actual mortgage at a certain amount of children that you have. That literally not tax cuts, but in fact, after a certain amount of children, after 4 children, tax-free for life.
Here's how I would design ideas like that. So what you need to do is design public policy where over time our values, the conservative values, are proven right. I'll give you an example. So we argue about the education issue a lot. We lose that issue a lot. Currently we're on the upside of that. I hear a lot of politicians talk about vouchers. I think vouchers are a terrible idea. Do you know why? Do you know what a voucher is?
Yes.
What is it? Have you used one this week?
No.
Did you use one last week?
No.
Have you used one in the last month?
No.
How about last year? Did you use a voucher last year?
No.
Have you ever used a voucher?
Sometimes, if you going to
No. Vouchers.
It's considered free money.
Vouchers
No.
are considered by too many in the public to be money taken out of public schools and takes money from public schools. So I would offer vouchers. I would offer coupons for a free education. Have you used a coupon?
Yes. All the time.
This week? Week
Yeah.
before? Yeah.
Email.
Does everybody know what a coupon is?
Yes.
Has everybody used a coupon?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think the left could redefine a coupon?
Yeah.
Yes.
No. Could they redefine a voucher?
Perhaps.
Of course they have. It's a very negative word. Coupons, free coupons for the poor.
Discount. Yeah.
And I would say, if you are below the poverty line, here's your free coupon for an education. And you can go to any school you want. Any school. Public, private, parochial, Catholic, whatever. You can go to any school you want. Do you think the poor would like that?
Yeah.
Of course they would. Do you think the union left would like that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, but they're going to be arguing against a free education coupon.
Yep.
You see the difference? I mean, it sounds like semantical difference, but you know who told me this? An education reporter in Detroit. He said, Rick, I talk to the parents all the time, and as soon as I say voucher, they argue against it. And then I say, well, what if someone give you a free education coupon? Well, that's a great idea. You see the difference? It's just little things like that. It's the framing. It's how you talk about it. Social Security. I would give every poor person a free Social Security investment account and keep them on Social, and don't take them off of Social Security. Free. Do you know why? Because people don't stay poor. That's the big lie. Some people stay poor. There is a lot of generational poverty, but mostly they don't stay poor. And you know what happens when they get to a certain level, and the government says you no longer qualify for this free investment account that you have that has been building wealth over time because it's invested. Do you think they would want to give that up?
No.
Of course not. So you design public policy so that the constituent of your opponent is for the thing that you're trying to give them. And they have to argue against it. Suddenly the Democrats would have to say, no, we want to take away your personal savings account, which is your money, and you can leave to your kids. We want to take away your free education coupon, where your kids can go anywhere they want, because by virtue of being poor. So I just think we can think better. That's the way I would think about that kind of thing. But I do want to move on with the
Right. Whatever you feel for the coupons or vouchers, we do have a lecture, and we're on slide 1, so we're gonna jump into
There we
it.
go.
As
But we got
exciting
3
as the
hours.
debate is, we've only got you for so long. I want to get you the speech material, so effective speeches.
Anybody remember who this is?
Yeah, Reagan,
Right.
yeah.
You were right.
One more click.
I did it right by Brian. Sorry. Does that sound? Yeah. Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we take pride in presenting a thoughtful address by Ronald Reagan. Mr. Reagan.
Thank you and good evening. The sponsor has been identified, but unlike most television programs, the performer hasn't been provided with a script. As a matter of fact, I have been permitted to choose my own words and discuss my own ideas regarding the choice that we face in the next few weeks. I have spent most of my life as a Democrat. I recently have seen fit to follow another course. I believe that the issues confronting us cross party lines. Now, one side in this campaign has been telling us that the issues of this election are the maintenance of peace and prosperity. The line has been used, we've never had it so good. But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived the tax burden that reached a third of its national income. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share. And yet our government continues to spend $17 million a day more than the government takes in. We haven't balanced our budget 28 out of the last 34 years. We've raised our debt limit 3 times in the last 12 months. And now our national debt is 1.5 times bigger than all the combined debts of all the nations of the world. We have $15 billion in gold in our treasury. We don't own an ounce. Foreign dollar claims are $27.3 billion. And we've just had announced that the dollar of 1939 will now purchase 45 cents in its total value. As for the peace that we would preserve, I wonder who among us would like to approach the wife or mother whose husband or son has died in South Vietnam and ask them if they think this is a peace that should be maintained indefinitely. Do they mean peace, or do they mean we just want to be left in peace? There can be no real peace while one American is dying someplace in the world for the rest of us. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, 2 friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in the individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course.
So what was Reagan doing there? Does anybody remember? What was the point of that speech?
he was reframing.
Yeah, the idea, the issue.
Yeah, but why did he want to give that speech? I know he didn't mention the speech, but I could accept for it. He was actually campaigning for Barry Goldwater. Right? That was the purpose of that speech. That was set up by the Goldwater campaign. Did you catch at the beginning? Reagan was not a Republican, but a
Democrat.
He was a Democrat. He was an FDR Democrat, had been for most of his life, and he realized eventually that the Democratic Party had left him. He was largely influenced by his boss at GE, Mr. Bulwark. And there's a book, I don't know if you ever read it, called The Education of Ronald Reagan. It's a very interesting book. And Reagan didn't fly, didn't like to fly. And so he would travel to these GE plants, mostly on trains. And so when you're on long train rides from one GE plant to another, what made Reagan brilliant in his communication at the GE plants, he would walk around the factory all day and actually listen to people. And they would re-encapsulate everything he heard that day, and he would tell all the employees at the speech that night, and they just thought he was brilliant because he'd actually listened to what they said and repeated it back to them, right? And so he would read these, Bulwark would send them little packets of, you should read these things. And they were very conservative ideas and thought, and over time, Reagan came to see that the conservative way was the way, and he's recently a Republican. What else did Reagan do in the speech, do you think, that made this speech effective?
He's telling stories.
He's telling stories.
Yes.
He's telling stories,
I think
yes.
he paints the picture in front of the
Yes.
audience
Yes.
that you have to choose either go up or
go down.
Yes.
And there's no left or right.
Uh-huh.
And I think that really hits the
And I've heard some other politicians
Yeah.
use that, who obviously have watched the speech. Yeah, it's an important concept, but the stories are really important because when you tell a story, he did rattle off some statistics. Does anybody remember the statistics?
It's a balanced budget, national debt, tax burden.
Well, you took notes. Very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
You're a good student here. But people don't tend to remember statistics. It kind of goes over their head. But they can remember a story. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
You can't remember a speech. But you can go home that night and tell your spouse you watched the speech that day, and you can repeat the story, like the whole thing, after hearing it one time. Why is that? Because somehow our minds and our hearts are wired to hear stories, and they make them easy to repeat. And so using stories in speeches is very appropriate. It's not always appropriate on radio and television because there's often no time to tell a story. There's not enough time before the break, or when the host cuts you off, or when the host thinks this is a long, boring story. But in a speech, you can tell a story in the way he laid it out. He didn't tell long stories, but he told very effective stories, yes.
But most of the day, the time that we're spending, we're gossiping.
Yeah, we're just telling each other stories.
Right, gossiping. Tabloid business.
Yep, all the time. So, when we're talking about creating a speech, I generally think about these four things. It doesn't have to be all these things, but it should be some of them. I do think your speech, in some ways, needs to be provocative. That doesn't mean it needs to be offensive. It just needs to get people from the very beginning. Every speech has a headline. What did I tell people this in my debate class? What is the headline you want to generate out of this debate? And is all your communication in the debate geared toward getting that headline of which you want? And so speech should be much the same way. Is everything I'm saying in the speech geared toward getting the headline out of the speech that I want? And it should open in some provocative way, like a question, or a provocative statement where people say, oh, I hadn't heard that before, or oh, that's a new twist. Oh, or I wonder where that's going. Well, I wonder what the answer to that question is. It creates people, they want to hear more, because like a great storyteller, you're slowly unraveling the story, right? You're making people wait for it. And that's what a good storyteller does, and that's what a good speechwriter will do, is they'll open with a provocative statement that will capture people's attention and make them lean forward and want to listen. It should be informative. It should tell the audience something they don't know, or reinforce something they do know, but in a much stronger way to help them communicate that same message themselves. It needs to be authoritative. That is, the speaker has some credentialing to be able to speak about the topic of which they're speaking. Don't confuse the word authoritative with authoritarian-like, right? We're not talking about authoritarians here, we're talking about authoritative. In other words, I know what I'm speaking about. Many politicians have perfected this. They always seem to know what they are talking about, even when they don't have the slightest idea, because it's just the way they assert themselves, right? But that's a skill that you should gain. And of course, I want you to know what you're talking about, and I spend a little time on that and why that is so important. And finally, speeches, people like to be entertained. I don't think your speech has to always be entertaining. There are certainly times for serious and sobering speeches. Reagan liked to use humor in his speeches, but he often had a pretty sober message. But he did put a lot of quips in there. He liked to get people to laugh. Reagan also, much to the chagrin of the left, who either didn't understand him, or as his biographer Edmund Morris called him, an amiable dunce. He was not a dunce. He was a very brilliant communicator. If you looked at his book, it's called Reagan in His Own Hand. And Reagan in His Own Hand, most of the book is filled with Reagan's speeches where you can see for yourself Reagan crossing out words and putting in new words, because he was always trying to economize the language and make it simpler. I worked for Ted Cruz in the 2016 campaign, and the New York Times was keeping track of the level of language, the language that was used in speeches in terms of, or public communication, and they would grade them on a scale from, like kindergarten to, graduate courses. And Cruz was consistently postgraduate, like way too complicated. And the ideal was, well, we were successful. But by the end of the campaign, we got down to the 7th grade, which is pretty much where you want to be. Seems kind of a shame that you have to be in the 7th grade, but you do. Trump was consistently much lower than that, but we don't need to get into that. He was a very simple communicator. People clearly understood his message. When you're choosing a subject or a theme, you're allowed to have broad themes and broad subjects, and a lot of things can fall under those subjects. The issue of crime is a big issue, because you can talk about criminal justice, you can talk about the judicial system, you can talk about the Supreme Court, you can talk about probation officers, you can talk about policing, there's all kinds of things, gun control, it all falls under criminal justice. Just make sure everything falls into the one theme of your speech. It's important to be passionate about the topic that you're choosing to talk about. I really believe that a good speaker who really believes in their topic can make literally anything interesting. Anything interesting. You've heard people make a great living of telling stories about things that are so mundane, yet they're wildly entertaining. One good place to look for examples of good public speaking, of course, is TED Talks. I don't know if you've ever spent any time on TED Talks, but there are a lot of good public speakers there, and many of them talk about very mundane things. But you don't get to do a TED Talk unless you are a proven commodity, and so they're all very entertaining and they're very interesting. And they all run 18 minutes. That's the magic number that TED Talks believes that the average human being can listen to one person for about 18 minutes. Sadly for you, you'll be listening to me for far more than 18 minutes. But that's just like the sweet spot, 18 minutes. I don't know why, but I think they're right. Keep your message fairly simple. Talk in terms of binaries. I was doing a class like this last week, and a very educated man actually works he's a foreign service officer. He kept saying sort of, and I'm like, what do you mean sort of? Well, sort of. I'm like, well, no, it's either it is or it is. There's no sort of here.
Right.
You're not up there to tell me sort of. You're up there to tell me declaratively what it is you believe and want to communicate. And I'm not interested in sort of. I can get sort of anywhere, right? So it's things like that would that got me thinking that we need people who are declarative and know what they believe, that are passionate about what they believe in. They can talk about it in simple terms. So it is that the essence of communication is that I communicate to you, and you communicate it to somebody else, and my message gets through. Like the game, remember the game, the kids, telephone, right? Kids always screwed up because they changed it on purpose, right? But if you were not to change it on purpose, if the message got all the way through and it was correct, that's the art of communication. If you can communicate a message to someone, and it goes through 4 iterations, and basically the heart of the message is the same, or even improved, then we are communicating. Stick to the rule of 3. In general, you can have 3 sub-themes to your, subtopics to your theme, but for some reason, people can't remember 4. They can remember 3. They can say, yeah, he mentioned A, B, and C, but they will never get to D. It's just something about it, we don't know why, but 3 seems to work.
You know why?
Why?
In baseball, they strike you out. In soccer, two yellow card equal 1 red card.
Oh, so it's a soccer thing.
Kind of like baseball sporting things, I don't know.
Yeah, 3, but not 4. The most important part of a public speaking presentation is actually a preparation. So I'm going to let some people speak up here today, and then I will ask for some volunteers and other people who want to give it a go. And you're not going to get to prepare at all unless you're sitting there now thinking, what could I talk? Could I give a 2-minute speech on something? Let's see. Then you're preparing. But in your preparation, the reason preparation is so incredibly important is it takes away all the things that detract or create our fears about public speaking. The fear of public speaking is often generated because we worry that people are going to think we don't know what we're talking about, or I haven't thought everything through. And if you do your preparation and your research correctly, then you will master your topic, and you will get excited about it, and you can't wait to tell people about it. And it eliminates a lot of the problems people have with public speaking. It's all in the preparation. So, and I work with a lot of politicians, who are very good. They could wing it. They could get up behind the podium and just rattle on and do fine. And I always say to them, imagine if you prepared. I mean, how good, maybe you'd be running for a higher office. Who knows, but why would you do that to yourself? Why would you not actually prepare? Or the worst, and I'm like this too, is they don't prepare. You know why? Because they're addicted to the adrenaline rush. Does that ring true with anybody? Does that resonate with anybody? Do you know what I'm talking about? What I would do, and this was a terrible habit, is I would go on, so I periodically and episodically, but I do have a contract with MSNBC now, but I would go on Fox News or MSNBC or CNN, and they would call, and I was always, by the seat of my pants, getting to the studio just in time to get made up and get in the chair and go. And it was always frantic. And I wondered why I did that. I wondered why do I do this to myself? All I have to do is leave earlier, and none of this would happen. And then I realized why. Because when I sat in the chair and the light went on and they talked to me and my endorphin, everything was rushing. And I'm good that way.
The pressure's on.
Yeah, the pressure just turns the synapses on, and I can think, and I'm going, right? But here's the problem: you're going to miss a hit. You're going to be late, and worse than that, you're causing everybody else grief because the producer's worried you're not going to show up. The people in makeup are not being able to do their job correctly. The sound guy's like rushing in, and it's not fair to anybody that you do that. So I thought, how can I solve this problem? And I solved it. I showed up from then on like 20 minutes to a half hour early. That's my normal habit. I'll come 15, 20 minutes early. And I'm relaxed, I'll have a cup of coffee, and I recreate the adrenaline rush in my head. I can do that. I can actually make myself go into that really hyper excited mode where my brain is working. Now, it works just the opposite for other people. they get really nervous, and their brain shuts down, right? And it doesn't work. So if you're like that, do not show up late. Do not create for yourself an adrenaline rush. Be prepared. One of the first things you want to know about the audience that you're speaking to is who are they? What do they expect? Are they going to be on your side of the issue? Or are they going to be against your issue? It's fine if they're against your issue, but you better be pretty good and pretty persuasive. And I've seen lots of occasions like that. I think Gingrich is actually one of the best of them. He could stand up in front of an audience who absolutely disagreed with him and get a round of applause because he was just very good at being very persuasive. And can you actually change their position? And how would you do that? So what you have to do is be able to enter and get into their world and what's real for them and describe it. And in fact, it was a Gingrich speech. He was talking to the American Medical Association, and this was about Hillary Care at the time, so this was a long time ago. And they had all endorsed Hillary Care. And then Gingrich started to talk about their personal interface with government as a doctor, and the billing, and Medicare, and Medicaid, and he had them laughing at themselves, because it was absurd to think that Hillary Care was the solution they wanted. They had already endorsed it. I don't mean to bring all this up, he said, but you're the ones who complained, and now you want to make it even worse. And so it was remarkable that he was able to, he got a standing ovation. They still endorse Hillary Care. So in that sense, all communication occurs where? Here? In my mouth? No. In yours, in yours, in yours. And in fact, every person perceives my words or any words that they hear, even though we're all together, all the same word, you're all listening to me say the same thing, you're reading the same words on the screen, all of you have a different experience about what those words mean. Why? Because we all have different experiences, and we remember and recall different examples or experiences that might relate to some of the things I'm saying. And that's going to be different for every person. But then there are whole groups of people for which life experience is different. And so to be aware of them. So are there differences between the experiences of, say, men and women? Sure. You're hesitating.
Sure, I said sure, yes.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. I was just There are different experiences between different socioeconomic classes. There are differences between people who live in urban areas and people who live in rural settings. There are different experiences between racial classes. There are differences between heritages, between people's heritage. There are differences between first-generation immigrants and 10th generation. Okay, you're all tracking with me? It's different. And so we have to communicate in a way that we're relating to the audiences that, so we have to really think about it. We have to really think about who are we communicating to? How do they think? What's important to them? What is their experience? So I don't want to say anything that just doesn't resonate with them because I hadn't considered their experience. So you obviously want to know what is it they believe before you communicate, so you have a better shot at having them hear what it is you actually want to say. My favorite part, research. I like this part because, and so I work in politics, and so I'm helping politicians communicate. So I'm working with politicians all the time to communicate. And you know what? You know why I love politics mostly? Because the learning is never ending. It's like never ending. Because the next news story brings a whole set of different facts that I might not have known. I now know that Ukraine borders Russia, Belarus, I think Macedonia, and one other country that I'm forgetting now, right? But so I'm learning geography here, right? All because Ukraine is in the news. And we do that all the time. Or we learn about different policies, and we learn about the histories of those policies. Find out, what are the histories of the policies that we talk about? We talk about, tax cuts for families, or tax incentives for families. Well, there's a whole history there, and why it is. Why is our tax code so complicated? There's a whole history there. So any topic you decide to talk about, I don't care if you talk about, you know, the history of peanut butter and jelly. I'll bet you there's a fascinating history about peanut butter and jelly. Go find out what the story is, so you'll be able to tell it. One thing about any topic that you discuss, particularly in the world of the political world, and I also tell my debate classes this, is you should understand all points of view and perspective about the issue which you're talking about, including those you don't agree with. In fact, if you're in my debate class, I want you to understand and argue. I want you to be able to argue your opponent's positions better than they can. Why would I want to do that? Because once you understand their best positions and can articulate them, you can formulate the response to it. But if you don't take the time to consider their best arguments, we miss the response all the time. And in fact, we can point out how lack of communication, lack of knowledge, the way stories have been framed have led to wars, led to people dying, led to famines. I mean, terrible things have happened because people in the right places were not exerting leadership and communicating and pushing back on the intelligentsia about their misguided visions of the world. Back here in Reelsville, this is not how the world works, and people need to speak up about it. So be curious about your topic. Read a variety. So I read the Wall Street Journal editorial every morning because I just love it. I don't know why. It's just like I like the way they deal with topics. I don't always agree with it. I mostly do. But I also read the Washington Post editorials, and I read a lot of the columns there. So I may not agree with them, but if it's well argued, I can appreciate it. But then I want to be thinking, what's the argument? What's my argument from a conservative perspective when asked that I could argue against this, or I could argue a conservative point of view about it? When we're preparing our talk, and this is not a speech writing class, but which would be much more detailed, but basically you want to think about, as I mentioned earlier, what your headline is. And so if your speech was getting covered by a news reporter, what would I want the headline to be? What would I want people to take away from the speech? And so everything has to be constructed to fulfill that objective of getting that headline. So then you want to outline your talk. So there are several ways to deliver a speech. You can deliver an impromptu speech, which some of you may do today. You can deliver prepared remarks. You can read your speech from a podium, as Reagan did here. I don't know if you saw it. Reagan was reading his speech from a podium. I don't recall if there were teleprompters there or not, but he looked down quite a bit. But it was all appropriate. It was not, it's okay to look at your notes. In fact, Reagan would carry around 3x5 cards. And the way he would construct his speech, because he'd given so many speeches, he would make it interesting and he'd shuffle the cards. And then he'd deliver the speech in the order that they came. Because they were just reminders of little stories. And he was brilliant at connecting them all together into one big speech. So he was very good at that. I had a candidate one time who I told that story to. And so he walked around the rest of the campaign with his little cards. And even when he was talking in front of the microphone, he would just read, he would just shuffle it. I don't know, it just worked for him. Like, he won. It was Kirk Clausen in Florida won. He's not in Congress anymore. But yeah, he was really good at following direction, I guess. Okay, so all speeches have a structure. And the basic structure is an opening, and I've asked you to make your openings provocative. Be provocative. Ask a question or a statement that sounds like it could be true, but I'll need more evidence. I'd like to be convinced. And then the body of the speech, which is basically providing that evidence. Examples, statistics, citing news articles, but most importantly, stories. Stories that reinforce your opening. Your opening is basically your thesis. And part of the complaint I have, like an op-ed, if you write an op-ed, I don't know if you've ever written an op-ed before, right? You have the lead, LED, they say, don't bury your lead, and the lead needs to come at least in the first paragraph, probably by the second sentence, and most op-ed editors, when they're considering an op-ed, if they haven't read the lead in the first 3 sentences, they just put it aside. Like, no. So make sure your lead in an op-ed is right up front. This is exactly what we're going to talk about here. This is it. Same in the speech. Should come right away. It shouldn't take very long for you to get the plane off the ground, as it were, right? So get the plane off the ground. Let people know what you're talking about. And it goes back to the old adage. What do we say? Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them.
And then wrap it up.
Tell them what you told them. So tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. So we have a provocative opening, basically telling them what I'm going to tell them. I'm going to prove it using stories and examples in the body of my speech, and then I'm going to have a dramatic conclusion of why I'm right, and maybe ask for take a call to action. That now that you believe this too, you should do this, or consider next time you do whatever it is that how you want to close. Structures can be simple or complicated. So I'll use Gingrich as a good example. He loved the past, future, present example of speech giving. He was a historian by trade, had a PhD in European history, and so he would often begin his speeches telling a dramatic story in history. And then he would use that story, as you should, to bind the audience together as one unit. We as fellow Republicans, we as fellow conservatives, we, whatever it was, we were all together. Despite all our differences, we're all here together. We all believe this. That was his point. Then he would talk about the future that we want together. And then he would talk about what do we have to do today to get to that future. That was the construction, basically, of his speech. He would cite the past, use an example of a struggle, apply it to a future vision, and then talk about what needs to happen today for that vision to be fulfilled. In fact, I think that was the whole sales pitch of the contract with America. Basically, if you elect us, we'll fulfill the contract. And when we do, you'll have these things. And they actually, remarkably, they did it. Most speeches are conducted in the problem solution, very simple. Here's the problem, here's the solution. Not hard. Others are assertion and argument. One great speech that you might look at and study is Lincoln's speech at Cooper Union. It's 7,200 words. There was no Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, television, radio. Everybody in New York City who saw Lincoln and laid their eyes on him, laid his eyes on Lincoln for the first time in their lives. They had no idea what he looked like. He was a very tall, lanky, fairly unattractive person, right? And in fact, many people described his appearance as shocking. And when Lincoln spoke, he would plant his 2 feet, and he would never move. He didn't walk about, he didn't gesticulate a lot, he would just move. During the speech, he used the refrain, and the refrain was a Douglas assertion about slavery, actually. And at the beginning, everybody listened to the assertion and sort of accepted it because it sounded like common sense. Like, of course, everybody believes that, right? That's what he's running on, okay. And he would, all through the body of the speech, bit by bit, destroy Douglas's argument, and then would return to the refrain. By the end of the speech, 7,200 words, which would take quite a while, the audience was buckled over, laughing at Douglas, at the absurdity of the refrain that Lincoln had utterly demolished in the speech. It's brilliant. Harold Holzer, who's a liberal, wrote a book called Lincoln at Cooper Union. It's a very good book and definitely worth studying. If you're interested in Lincoln, I think he's one of the most interesting, gifted communicators that we've ever had as president. And the author, Ron White, takes apart Lincoln's speeches word by word, bit by bit, because Lincoln would write his long speeches on trains. He didn't give a lot of speeches. Back in those days, he would give one speech, and then he would tell the press, "It's in my speech, go read it." And he would edit his speeches for the newspapers, and they would print them in full. Imagine that. Because speech giving and debates and speech giving in those days were a form of public entertainment. It's, you packed up the kids, got a lunch, and you went to go see the speech, and you'd spend 2 hours listening to speeches and debates in the public square, because that was the thing to do, right? Because there was no TV, there was no, you know, it was kind of interesting. So people were very well educated and very well connected to the issues, and you had great orators like Lincoln. And so he would use that bit of framing to tear apart his opponent's speeches. During a speech, like a great concert, you should use a range of emotion. If you go to a concert and it's the same tone the whole time, right, it kind of will wear on you, right? It gets boring, right? So you want to use a different range of emotion. And you want to have a soundbite, you know, something that people kind of remember. I'm working with a candidate in Maryland right now, Neil Parrott. He's running for Congress in the 6th District. And he's got a lawsuit against the gerrymandered districts that the Democratic legislature passed, which clearly violates the Constitution. And his line for that is, you know, voters should choose politicians. Politicians should not be choosing voters. I know that's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
The whole idea wrapped up in one pithy statement that's repeatable, right? Politicians, voters should choose politicians. Politicians should not choose voters. Very nice. So a couple things we want to check when we're giving a speech is check sincerity. I say this to politicians a lot because they often give the same speech night after night after day after day after day, and they have to learn to give their best to the audience all the time. So they have to appear as if they want to deliver the speech as if they just thought of it, right? That's the level of performance that you'd like to give your audience, is as if you had given it for the first time. That it does have a range of emotion, that you are establishing your authority to speak on the topic and you communicate authoritatively. I'll use Gingrich again. He was very good. I've worked with Gingrich a long time. He was very good at asserting truth. Sometimes asserting things that were not so true. I remember one time he kept citing this poll, and because of the way he cited it, of course I thought, yeah, that's got to be accurate. And then I asked him about it. He said, yeah, there's this poll, go look it up. So I asked someone to go look it up in his office. And they called me later in the day and they said, oh yeah, I've sourced it. Yeah, how many sources do you have? 6. Great. What are they? Newt Gingrich, Newt Gingrich, Newt Gingrich, Newt Gingrich. He had been quoted 6 times citing this poll, but I talked to him later and I said, I think you conflated 2 different ideas that were in 2 different things, neither of which were a poll. Although your assertion is correct, it wasn't a poll. And he conceded I was right and that he had done that. But he was so convincing that I never even thought to check it. So do you have confidence when you're delivering your talk? Also volume. So be aware of the tonal quality of your voice. Some people just have a beautiful voice that just resonates. They can speak at a normal level, and it just goes forever, right? They just have that, who was it? The preacher Jonathan Edwards was known to speak to thousands of people at the same time and be well heard. He would literally stand on a soapbox, that's what they did in those days, and stand up and deliver a sermon in the public square. And Benjamin Franklin, who made quite a bit of money reprinting Jonathan Edwards' speeches, could hear the speech from quite a distance away and remarked about it. If you were, so here's the issue here is, if you have a soft voice or the tone of your voice does not carry, you will have to project your voice. But you have to do it carefully, because you don't want to sound like, you know, you're yelling or you're out of control or you're, you know, so it takes a little practice to be able to assert, to project your voice while maintaining the tone of your voice. And that's another tone. The tone of your voice really matters. Some speakers I've watched are just too intense, and some people like, I like an intense speaker personally, right? I'm like, yeah, give me more of that, right? But then I watch other people in the room, they're like counting the steps to the door. Like, if I got up now and walked over there. Would I make a nuisance of myself? Is it embarrassing to leave? But I really don't want to subject myself to this tone anymore. And so be careful about the tone, right? It's okay to make a point that you're angry about. And I'll talk more about this, but the most important thing is, as a speaker, you're always in control of your emotions, always. If your audience, falls on the floor weeping because you so told the story, that's great, let them do it, right? Or they get so mad they start wrecking the furniture, well, then you're a pretty effective speaker, right? But you can never lose control. You can never weep at the podium. You can never, get so you can't throw the podium across. Like, this is inappropriate. We don't do this. If your audience does it, great. But no, we want to be in control of our emotions. And I'll talk more about this because I think it's an important point. So check the intensity. Oh, one more thing. Well, let's go back. Not you yet. Wait a minute. Am I going backwards?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, Brian, you're gonna have to help me. I'm lost.
Are you looking backwards?
Yeah, backwards should be we should be the back button, but it's not.
I'll help you on this side. Or
There it is. I got it.
there we are.
I found it. You know what he did? He put in all these extra slides.
Oh.
To try to tease. He sabotaged me. Body language.
Yes.
So would you say men are better at reading body language or women? Right, by far. So you can check this. You can check. This is checkable. Drive up to a stoplight, and there's a vehicle in front of you, and it's two men, but they are talking to each other. Where are they facing? Forward. They're still talking, but they're go to the stoplight, vehicle, two women. They're talking to each other. Where are they facing? Exactly. Why? Huh? Because women can
Multitask.
they can multitask. There's no question about that.
Or they're focusing on the person.
Biofeedback. They can tell you what people are thinking, feeling, because they can read. There are hundreds of muscles in your face. Hundreds of them. And women, because they talk to each other, and they're looking for the biofeedback, it's important. They have become very skilled in understanding people's emotions, and so you're communicating, men, without you knowing it. You're not saying anything. You are saying something. Right? Okay. So you got that. So, but on the stage, sometimes there's a camera, and they'll project my face on the stage. Other times there's not. But it's important to use your whole body in a speech. And this is where I have trouble getting some people to come out of their shell, because when you are nervous, for some reason your hands don't want to come up from your side. Like it's like
stuck.
They're
super glue.
They're stuck. Like they won't move. Like, and then you're like, yeah. Look at that, a gesture, But when you get comfortable, and this is why I try to stretch people, use the full range of emotion, use your body as a communications tool. Yes?
Yeah, that was about the body language. So what is the right position to put your hands when you are speaking? So
Okay, well, I'll tell you what it is, which I just did. Okay, so I'll give you the do's. These are the do's and don'ts. Okay?
That's a don't.
Yeah.
That's a don't.
Why shouldn't I do this?
Because you're constantly your feet. You're not confident.
I'm not stable.
Right.
You might fall.
I'm like,
You're gonna tip
the audience is
over.
like, oh my gosh, she's gonna fall. They're suddenly concerned. Why would you do this to yourself? Stable footing. Firm footing all the time. Watch the edges of the stage, right? Don't fall off the stage, right? How about this?
No.
What's that?
It's close.
It's close contact.
Yeah.
You don't want people approach you.
Or this?
That's very close.
Right.
Unapproachable. It's not open
Right.
up.
So the correct position for your hands is if you're Italian, which I have none, but I would love to, honorary Italian, with my feet down. get used to gesticulating. Use your hands. In fact, I'm learning Italian. What do you think? We're fluent, right? Okay. No, you use your hands.
No, it's like a musical conductor, you know, like
Boom! Practice.
Yeah.
Getting your hands out here, being comfortable with them. Bill O'Reilly, his screen was like this. If you were in the studio, he spoke like this, and it was weird. But on TV, he knew exactly where that frame was.
Yep.
And he knew the guy's a pro, right? He knew exactly where to put his hands. So learn those things. Yeah.
But when you're talking, should you put the hand in like behind the podium, or you like?
So podiums. So like in TED Talks, there's almost never a podium.
Right.
Right. People wander around the stage and they talk. So if there's a podium, you can choose to just stand behind the podium, put your notes here, read it like Ronald Reagan did. It's fine, right? And you can touch the podium, you can grab it. In fact, this looks pretty confident, right? Pretty authoritative. Reagan, grab your podium. Don't like.
Yeah, cling on it.
Don't hang on. Hang on. You know,
Sorry,
just use it as a tool.
But relax, right?
And relax, but not too relaxed.
Right.
So like this, I don't think this is.
No, that's a no. That's a comedian talk.
But I can use the podium. You know, I can come and be on the side of the podium. If I had spit, I could walk the podium. I can come. Oh, this is scary. Look, I'm in the audience. I'm walking through the audience. So you can use all the space that you want. Whatever you're comfortable with, right? So I'm using the podium now because the microphone is here and I don't have a lavalier, so I'm projecting my voice. All right, so now let's see if Ryan's put in a trick slide. Oh,
Practice.
what's the #1 way to get good at public speaking?
Look at yourself in the mirror.
Practice. Well, the #1 way is to actually do it.
Right.
The #2 way is to practice. And we can practice all kinds of ways. We can practice in the mirror. We can practice on our own. We walk around with our own studio, right? Every one of you walks around with your own studio. You have a camera. You can set it up. You can ask someone to record you. You can invite your friends and family. You can give a speech. There's lots of ways to practice. You can also, volunteer. And once people recognize you that you will do public speaking, they tend to ask you to do it. Oh, would you introduce the next speaker? Oh, would you host the event? Oh, would you speak at the eulogy? Oh, would you say grace? That's a good way, right? I'll say grace. You can give thanks to God and practice your public speaking all at the same time. Right? So practice. It's important to practice, and it's really important. And I hate it as much as you probably do, to look at yourself deliver a talk or on TV. The problem we're so self-critical is I'll watch myself on TV and I'll be like, oh, I didn't say what I thought I said.
Yeah.
But no one knows I said it because I didn't say it.
Right.
But I know I didn't say it. And then it's like, lost opportunity. It was right there. I could have said it. I thought I said it. So it's tough to watch yourself. But do it because you'll understand that you might have things that need to be corrected. Quirky habits, your posture, lots of things that are all correctable. You fix them all, but you have to know what they are. All right, let's give you a chance to look at.
The eyeballs. Terrifying. Terrifying.
What's the video next?
He's scared.
You switched it again.
Next slide, it's there.
Okay. How many, if you'd like to admit it or not, how many people are nervous as public speakers?
Yes.
Okay, how many of you dread it? Like, oh, please don't ask me to do it. Really frightened of it. Okay, good. We don't have any of those.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like that. So, nerves really can destroy your speech. Why? Because there's a lack of focus. People tend to speak too quickly. They use the wrong body language. They can't think of what they were going to say. They can't find they'll even have notes and they can't find where they are. And then, everything will break down, right? But And then the worst thing that can happen is you will pass out and die.
On stage.
Yeah, which I've never actually seen. Although, who was the Florida cabinet secretary ran for office? She used to pass out routinely. Janet, remember who I'm talking
Janet
about?
Reno.
What was it?
Janet Reno. Or
Janet Reno.
Yeah.
She would give a speech, pass out, and say, "I'm fine," and then get back in. Okay. How do we confront this? Because this is a big challenge for a lot of people. It's the reason most people don't want to speak publicly. Yes.
Yeah, I like to speak in front of the people, but when I saw the cameras on like TV, I've been interviewing the TV channels too. But when I start looking at the cameras, I get so nervous, so I start like.
When you actually look in the camera?
Yeah. I like to speak with people and I speak with a lot of people in front of people, but when I start looking at the cameras that I start recording, that's my problem.
That's fixable. Don't look at it.
Don't look at it.
I can't, I try.
No, it's your mind. It starts with your mind.
It is all in your mind.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not shy to speak in front of the people, but when I look the cameras, that's when I become nervous.
What happens is, when you're speaking in front of an audience, right? You all are a great audience because you're giving me a lot of biofeedback, right? I'm watching and I'm seeing I'm seeing a couple people fall asleep. That's all right. But I'm trying not to look at them, right? I'm looking at the ones who are giving me I'm stealing your energy, like the smiles and the nodding head. Like I love it, right? That's going to help me. It's when people nod off that I kind of get self-conscious at work, right? When you're in a room doing television, you're mostly by yourself. And in the COVID era, you were mostly by yourself in a room at home with Skype. And it's very awkward to have a conversation in a room by yourself. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because it's hard to emote. And we train people to do that. Like, how do I sit in a room by myself and communicate? Like when you watch people on TV, they make you feel like we're all together, we're all in the same room, we're right here. They're not. They're looking at what you're looking at. And so you have to think about who you're talking to, and it's not the camera. The camera's your friend. So change your attitude about the camera. The camera's your friend, it's your best friend, and you have to stare at the camera because there's no other way. You can't get away with it. You gotta look at the camera. Because people, remember what I told you about eye contact? Remember I told you about all the muscles? If you're doing this on camera, it looks really bad. If you're looking over here, it looks really tight. You gotta look right at the camera. You all know this from doing Zoom and Skype. You know who's looking at the camera and talking to you, and who's staring at their keyboard. Makes a big difference, right? So what you want to do, all nervous energy is what? Energy. Nervous energy is energy. Energy is what you need for a speech. You want energy. What you have to do is learn to convert negative energy into positive energy. It sounds touchy-feely, but it's true, and you can do it because you can change when you're having negative thoughts and doubt. Your body is getting flooded with chemicals that it produces, right? It's all part of the fight or flight response, right? And so your body betrays you. It's doing it to preserve you ultimately, but it's betraying you because you're nervous, and then it starts flooding all these chemicals. Like look out, right? And so you have to say literally in your mind, no. And so what I do, and it works differently for different people. Some people pray, some people go off by themselves. I used to travel with Newton James Carville. He would be like a wild dog. Like it was crazy back then. Like, why do you have all this energy? I'm the son of a postman. I'm not supposed to be here. Why are you paying all this money to give a speech? I should be giving a speech. And that's how he was processing all this all the devil was talking to him. He had to get rid of it. It was like an exorcism every time. And you would fall asleep. Like it was ridiculous. But what you have to do is, so what I do is I excuse myself before a speech. I go to the men's room because everybody's gonna let you do that. Well, you shouldn't go. You should probably go to the ladies' room. But you go off by yourself. You look in the mirror and you say, "I can't wait to tell them. Yep. I've done my preparation. They're here to hear me speak. I have something important to say. I want to share it with them, and they want to hear it, and it's going to be great." And then you put a smile on your face. And when you put a smile on your face, and you look at yourself, what happens?
You relax.
Your body begins to flood itself with different chemicals. In fact, you know this, when you talk to other people and smile at them, you change their body chemistry. That's power, right? You literally change the body chemistry. You can do it yourself. It takes practice, and depending on your level of fear, it might take a few times to do it. You may not get it the first time, but you will get it. You will learn how to reverse nervous energy and use it actually to your advantage. All right? You believe me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You can do it.
Yes, I can.
All right. I can't wait to show you the speech. I hope you haven't watched it before, because this guy is fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Stark County Republican Party Executive Committee, good evening. And thank you, not only for your attendance, but for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Davidson, and I am seeking our party's nomination for the position of Stark County Treasurer on November 10th. November of 2010, excuse me. In terms of my background, I am from the village of Minerva, where I'm serving my 13th year as an elected service as a Minerva Council member. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public administration.
It's gonna get boring.
In a master's degree in communication. In terms of elections across Stark County, I have represented our party twice on the county ballot. In both the primary and the general elections. When I ran for Stark County Clerk of Courts in 1996 and Stark County Commissioner in 2000, and I will not apologize for my tone tonight. I have been a Republican, and that is good, and I have been a Republican, and that is bad. Albert Einstein issued one of my most favorite quotes in the history of the spoken word, and it is as follows: in the middle of opportunity, excuse me, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. I'm going to repeat that so I have clarity tonight. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. The Stark County Treasurer's Office is a mess. It is in dire need of structure and guidance.
His voice is losing.
And now is the time to seize this opportunity with an aggressive campaign and an even more aggressive campaigner.
He's like a coach in the locker room.
And nominated tonight, I promise each and every person in this room, I will hit the ground running, come out swinging, and end up winning. Let's send a message tonight to the people of Stark County and to the people of the Stark County Democratic Party. We're tired of business as usual.
Yeah, it's shaking and it's had it busy. I'm singing. That's why I don't look at the screen. It's shaking. No stabilizer. He's like a coach in a locker room during halftime, and his team is underdog. He's like, come on, come
We will
on.
not tolerate incompetence and irresponsibility any longer. Now is the time to stamp the Democratic stranglehold on the Treasurer's Office in two. And I harken back to what my friend Alex just said. He ran against the Treasurer in 1996. It was a problem then, it's a problem now. Infestation.
Okay, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, it's too much. Too much.
Did you win?
Oh, I need a break, and you do too. So some of you have parked in 2 hour zones. You might want to think about relocating your vehicles. Let's take, Brian, 10 minutes?
We'll do a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
We'll do 10 minutes, a hard 10 minutes. We're trying to keep on schedule. We get a bit more content. And then we have some folks who'd like to speak tonight as well for critiques of their speaking. And then afterwards we have dinner. So how about if it's what?
Till 5.
How about 5 o'clock? So meet back at 5. And we'll continue the show. Do more videos in addition to Rick.
That's awesome.
Ready? More videos.
I'm getting coffee.
Make sure you're back here in 10 minutes!
Oh, that was perfect. You must have watched
Yeah, you can do this.